This kill connection one. Judgment kills connection. You ever notice how quick we are to judge? Someone shares their story, their mistake, or even just a piece of their life, and before they can finish, our brain is already filing it under right or wrong, smart or stupid, worthy or not worth it. We don't even realize we're doing it half the time. But here's the problem. Judgment kills connection. It's like pouring water on a flame. It snuffs it out before it has a chance to grow. Think about the last time you opened up to someone and felt judged. Maybe you were vulnerable, talking about a failure, and the other person said something like, "Well, you should have known better." How did that feel? Did it make you want to share more? Or did it make you shut down, maybe even regret opening up at all? That's what judgment does. It doesn't build, it breaks. Here's the thing. People don't need our judgment. They already have enough of that in their own head. What they need is safety. Safety to bring their whole, messy, imperfect self to the table without fear of being condemned. And safety only happens when we resist the urge to judge and choose instead to understand. Now, let's be real. Judgment is easy. It feels natural because it protects us. If I can label someone as wrong, then I don't have to wrestle with their perspective. If I can call someone lazy, I don't have to understand their struggle. But easy isn't what builds trust. Easy isn't what deepens relationships. Easy is what kills them. So how do we fight judgment? We replace it with curiosity. Instead of "you should have done better," we say, "Tell me what happened." Instead of "why would you do that," we try, "Help me understand what led you there." See the difference? One pushes away, the other pulls closer. One says, "You're wrong." The other says, "You're human, and I want to know you better." Let me give you an example. A friend of mine once told me about losing a job because of a mistake he made. His voice cracked when he shared it, and I could see how heavy it was for him. Now, the easy thing would have been to say, "Well, you should have double-checked before sending that report." That's judgment. That's pointing out the obvious and making him feel worse. Instead, I just asked, "What was that like for you?" And that question changed everything. His shoulders dropped. His words started flowing. He didn't need a lecture. He needed a listener. That's the power of resisting judgment. It doesn't just make the other person feel better. It makes the relationship stronger, because connection isn't built on being right. It's built on being real. But let's go deeper. Sometimes judgment doesn't even come out of our mouth. It lives in our silence. We may not say, "You're wrong," but our tone, our eye roll, our crossed arms, they say it for us. That's still judgment. That still shuts people down, which means resisting judgment isn't just about controlling our words. It's about checking our hearts. And here's the truth. Judgment doesn't only kill connection with others, it kills connection with ourselves. When we spend all day labeling others, that same harshness boomerangs back. Suddenly, we're judging ourselves for not being enough, not doing enough, not achieving enough. The more judgment we pour out, the more it seeps in. So what's the way forward? Compassion. Compassion doesn't mean we excuse every action or agree with every choice. It means we remember that people are more than their mistakes. It means we choose to see the person before the problem. When we do that, we create the kind of environment where people feel free to grow, to change, to be honest. And that's where true connection is born. Imagine a world where instead of judging first, we listened first. Where instead of labeling people, we tried to love people, where every conversation was a safe space to be real. That's the world where families heal. That's the world where friendships last. That's the world where teams thrive. So here's the challenge. The next time you feel judgment rising up, pause, take a breath, and instead of saying, "You should have," try, "Tell me more." That one small shift could be the spark that keeps the connection alive. Because judgment kills connection, but curiosity, compassion, that's what makes it stronger. 2. Distraction kills connection. We live in a distracted world. Notifications buzzing, emails piling up, phones lighting up every 5 seconds. And let's be honest, most of us are guilty of giving the people we care about our leftovers, our leftover time, our leftover energy, and definitely our leftover attention. But here's the problem. Distraction kills connection. Think about it. You're sitting across from someone, pouring out your heart, and mid-sentence they glance down at their phone. What message does that send? Whether they mean it or not, it tells you. This screen is more important than you. And in that moment, the connection that could have deepened just died a little. Now, we like to defend ourselves. We say, I can multitask. I can listen and scroll. I can hear you while I type. But let's be real. That's not connection. That's not presence, that's convenience, and nobody feels truly valued in someone else's convenience. Connection requires presence. It requires putting aside everything else and saying with your eyes, your posture, your focus, you matter, you have my attention, right now, you're the priority. Here's the thing. People don't remember every word we say, but they remember how we made them feel. And one of the strongest feelings you can give someone is the gift of being seen. But you can't give that gift halfway. You can't make someone feel seen when half of you is somewhere else. Let me tell you a story. A while back, a friend of mine went through a tough breakup. When he finally opened up about it, we sat down at a coffee shop. And in that moment, I made a decision. Phone off, no distractions, full focus. I leaned in, I listened, I asked questions. Hours went by. Later he said, "You know what helped me the most? Just knowing you were really there." Notice, he didn't say my advice. He didn't say my solutions. He said my presence. That's what healed. That's what connected. And it works the same way at home. Kids know when you're not listening. They see the sideways glances at the phone. They hear the half-hearted uh-huh when your mind is somewhere else. And little by little, they stop sharing. Because why bother opening up if it feels like they're competing with a screen? The same is true in marriages, friendships, even at work. When people don't get our full attention, they get the message that they're not worth it. Now, let's talk about why this is so hard. Distraction feels urgent. That buzz in your pocket, it feels like it has to be checked right now. But urgency doesn't equal importance. The most important thing is the person right in front of you. And every time we choose the urgent over the important, we trade real connection for a cheap substitute. Here's the practical shift. Build intentional habits of presence. That might mean putting your phone on silent during dinner. It might mean turning off notifications when you're in a conversation. It might mean actually closing the laptop lid when someone walks in to talk. These sound small, but they communicate something huge. You matter more than this. And listen, presence isn't just about attention, it's about energy. Have you ever sat with someone who technically wasn't on their phone, but their mind was a million miles away? You can feel that. Presence means not only putting away the distractions around you, but also quieting the distractions inside of you. That means resisting the urge to rehearse your response while they're talking. It means letting go of the mental to-do list for a few minutes. It means anchoring yourself to the here and now. Distraction doesn't just steal connection in the moment. It steals trust over time. If someone always has to fight for your attention, eventually they'll stop trying. And that loss is way more costly than missing an email or a notification. So here's the challenge. The next time you're with someone, ask yourself, am I here or am I half here? If the answer is half here, then make the adjustment. Look them in the eye, put the phone down, clear the space, because connection isn't built in grand gestures. It's built in small, everyday choices, and one of the most powerful choices you can make is to be fully present. Distraction kills connection, but presence brings it back to life. 3. Assumptions kill connection. If there's one thing that quietly sneaks in and destroys connection, it's assumptions. We don't even mean to do it most of the time. But the moment we assume we already know what someone thinks, feels, or means, we stop listening. And the second we stop listening, the connection starts dying. Here's the truth. Assumptions are shortcuts. And shortcuts might save time on a GPS, but in relationships, shortcuts cut out the most important part, the actual understanding. Think about it. Someone comes home late, and before they explain, we assume they don't care. A friend cancels plans, and we assume they don't value us. A coworker is quiet in a meeting, and we assume they're disengaged, but what if none of that is true? What if the person stuck in traffic was fighting to get home? What if the friend canceling is overwhelmed and ashamed to admit it? What if the coworker is quiet because they're battling anxiety, not apathy? Assumptions kill connection because they write a story for someone else without giving them the chance to speak their truth. And let's be honest, most of our assumptions are fueled by insecurity. We assume they're mad at us, they're ignoring us, they don't care about us, because deep down, that's what we're afraid of. But when we project that fear onto someone else, we put a wall where there could have been a bridge. Here's a personal example. I once had a friend who went silent for weeks. No texts, no calls, nothing. My first assumption, I must have done something wrong. He must be upset with me. That thought grew heavier every day. Finally, I reached out. Turns out he had been walking through a family crisis and didn't know how to talk about it. It had nothing to do with me, but for weeks, I had been living in a story I created instead of the truth. That's what assumptions do. They build fake walls out of false stories. So how do we fight this? With curiosity. Curiosity is the opposite of assumption. Instead of saying, I already know, curiosity says, help me understand. Picture this, your partner comes home quiet, barely saying a word. The assumption might be, they're upset with me, but curiosity changes the script. Hey, I noticed you seem quiet tonight. What's going on? That opens the door to real connection instead of shutting it with a false narrative. Curiosity is powerful because it communicates two things. I don't want to guess. I want to know. And I don't want to judge. I want to understand. That posture alone deepens trust. But here's where it gets tricky. Sometimes we assume we're being helpful. Someone shares a problem, and before they finish, we cut in with, oh, I know what you mean, or that happened to me too. We assume similarity equals understanding, but it doesn't. Even if you've been through something similar, their experience is still theirs. When we assume we know exactly how they feel, we steal the space for them to share it in their own words. Instead, try asking, what's that like for you? It sounds simple, but it does two things at once. First, it shows you care. Second, it makes space for them to describe their reality without you putting words in their mouth. That's how connection grows, not through assumption, but through invitation. Another thing, assumptions aren't always negative. Sometimes they're overly positive. We assume someone should know we appreciate them, so we never actually say it. We assume someone already knows they're loved, so we skip expressing it. But silence rooted in assumption is still a connection killer. Don't assume they know. Say it anyway. Connection thrives when people feel understood, valued, and safe. Assumptions rob us of all three. They replace understanding with misunderstanding, value with doubt, and safety with insecurity. And the worst part, they do it silently before we even notice. So here's the challenge: catch your assumptions in the act. The next time your mind starts writing a story about what someone else thinks or feels, pause. Ask yourself, do I know this for sure, or am I guessing? If you're guessing, stop the story and start a conversation. Because assumptions kill connection, but curiosity gives it room to breathe, grow, and thrive. 4. Comparison kills connection. Comparison might feel harmless. Sometimes it even feels helpful. Someone tells you they're struggling, and you respond with, oh, at least it's not as bad as what happened to me. Or maybe they share a win, and you quickly respond with your own story of success. But here's the hard truth: comparison kills connection. It doesn't matter if it's comparing pain or comparing progress. It always creates distance instead of closeness. Why? Because comparison shifts the focus away from the person in front of you and back onto yourself. And the moment you make their story about you, the connection dies. Let me show you what I mean. Imagine someone opens up about losing their job. They're vulnerable, raw, maybe even holding back tears. And you say, oh yeah, that happened to me once. But honestly, at least you don't have kids. You've got it easier. You might think you're offering perspective, but what they hear is, your pain doesn't matter. You didn't meet them where they were. You moved the spotlight to yourself. That's how comparison kills connection, or let's flip it. Say a friend is excited because they ran their first mile without stopping. They're proud, they're glowing, and instead of celebrating, you jump in with, "That's awesome. I remember when I ran my first half marathon." Again, you may think you're relating, but what you've done is minimize their joy. Their accomplishment suddenly feels smaller because yours is louder. And just like that, the connection that could have deepened through shared celebration gets lost in the shuffle of comparison. Here's the truth: people don't share to be measured, they share to be met. They don't want you to decide if their pain is enough or if their joy is big enough. They want you to stand with them in it. Think about it this way: connection is like sitting on the same bench, shoulder to shoulder, but comparison puts you on a different bench across the street, yelling about how your view is better or worse. It separates instead of unites. So how do we fight the habit of comparison? With empathy. Empathy doesn't measure. Empathy doesn't minimize. Empathy doesn't say, "at least," or "well, when I." Empathy says, "that sounds really hard," or "wow, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you." Empathy doesn't shift the spotlight. It holds it steady on the person who trusted you with their story. Here's a moment I'll never forget. Years ago, I went through a tough season. Someone I loved deeply had passed away. I was raw, grieving, and fragile. When I finally shared it with a friend, he didn't jump in with, "Oh yeah, when my grandmother passed. Or at least they lived a long life." He just said, "That must hurt so much. I'm here." That was it. No comparison, no story swapping, just presence. And in that moment, I felt more connected than I had in weeks. That's what empathy does. It creates space, it validates, it builds. Now, let's be real. Comparison is sneaky. It doesn't always come out loud. Sometimes it's silent, happening in our own minds. A coworker gets promoted, and instead of celebrating, we think, "Why not me?" A friend shares good news, and we measure ourselves against them. Silent comparison robs us of the chance to genuinely connect in joy, because when envy walks in, connection walks out. The same is true for suffering. If someone's struggle doesn't look big enough compared to what we've faced, we can quietly dismiss it. But pain isn't a competition. Struggle doesn't need to be ranked to be real. Everyone deserves compassion, no matter how their pain compares to ours. So here's the shift. Replace comparison with curiosity and compassion. Instead of sharing your story right away, ask theirs. Instead of measuring, lean in. Instead of minimizing, magnify. Celebrate fully, comfort deeply. Let their story take up space without rushing to add your own. Because here's the reality: connection isn't built when we compete, it's built when we care. And nothing communicates care like resisting the urge to measure and instead choosing to meet people exactly where they are. Comparison kills connection, but empathy makes it unshakable. 5. Defensiveness kills connection. Let's be honest. None of us like being told we're wrong. None of us enjoy hearing that we messed up, hurt someone, or could have done better. Our natural reflex when that happens, defensiveness, we explain, we justify, we deflect. We protect ourselves, but here's the truth: defensiveness kills connection. Why? Because connection requires humility, openness, and the willingness to listen. And defensiveness is the exact opposite of all three. It builds walls where bridges should be. Think about it. Someone tells you, "Hey, when you said that, it really hurt me." And instead of pausing to understand, you immediately fire back, "Well, that wasn't my intention." Or you're being too sensitive. What happens in that moment? The other person doesn't feel heard. They don't feel valued. They feel dismissed. And the connection that could have grown through honesty and vulnerability, it dies in the shadow of your defense. Here's the thing: most of us don't mean to be defensive. It happens because we feel attacked even when we're not. We feel like admitting fault means admitting we're a bad person. So we armor up. But that armor, instead of protecting the relationship, suffocates it. I'll never forget a conversation I had years ago. Someone close to me told me, "You don't really listen when I talk. You're always half distracted." My gut reaction. Defensiveness. I wanted to say, "That's not true. I listen all the time. I'm just busy." But if I had gone there, I would have missed the point. They weren't saying I was a bad listener in general. They were saying in that moment they felt unseen. The choice was mine, defend myself or hear them. One would protect my ego. The other would protect the connection. That's the key. Defensiveness protects the self, but listening protects the relationship. So how do we fight defensiveness? By learning to pause, that deep breath before we speak is where humility lies. Instead of rushing to defend, we let the words land. We ask ourselves, are they trying to hurt me, or are they trying to help this relationship? 9 times out of 10, feedback is an invitation, not an attack. Another strategy is shifting from intention to impact. Most of us defend by saying, "I didn't mean it that way," and that may be true. But the truth is, impact matters more than intention. If I step on your foot, I can say, "I didn't mean to," but your foot still hurts. The relationship only heals when I say, "I'm sorry. I didn't realize that hurt you." Defensiveness focuses on clearing our name. Connection focuses on caring for theirs. And here's something powerful. Sometimes the most connecting words you can say are, "You're right." Those 2 words disarm tension. They build trust. They show humility. You don't have to grovel. You don't have to over-explain. Just acknowledge what's true. Now, this doesn't mean you have to accept every piece of criticism as gospel. Some feedback may be unfair or inaccurate. But even then, defensiveness doesn't help. You can still listen calmly, thank them for sharing, and respond with grace. That shows maturity. That shows you value the connection more than winning the argument. Let me add this. Defensiveness doesn't just show up in words. It shows up in body language too. The eye roll, the crossed arms, the heavy sigh. Those reactions speak loudly, even if your mouth stays closed. If you want real connection, you can't just silence your words. You have to soften your posture. The beauty of dropping defensiveness is this: it creates safety. When people know they can bring things to you without fear of being attacked or dismissed, they'll trust you more. They'll open up more, and that deepens connection in ways defensiveness never could. So here's the challenge. The next time someone gives you feedback, before you defend yourself, pause, take a breath, and ask, what matters more right now, being right or being connected? If the answer is connection, then choose to listen, learn, and let down your guard. Because defensiveness kills connection, but humility makes it unbreakable. 6. Silence kills connection. Silence can be powerful. The right kind of silence, pausing before reacting, sitting in peace with someone, sharing a quiet moment, can deepen connection. But there's another kind of silence that does the opposite, the silence of avoidance, the silence of things left unsaid, and that silence kills connection. Think about it. How many relationships have drifted apart not because of some big fight, but because of silence? No one spoke up. No one apologized. No one said, "This hurt me," or "I love you," or "I need you." Over time, the words that never came built walls thicker than the one's harsh words ever could. Here's the truth. Silence can feel safe, but it's not. It feels safe because it avoids discomfort, but connection doesn't grow in comfort. It grows in honesty, and when we trade honesty for avoidance, we lose the very closeness we're trying to protect. Let's take apologies as an example. How many times have we known deep down we should say, "I'm sorry," but stayed silent? Maybe pride got in the way, maybe fear did, maybe we told ourselves it'll just blow over, but here's the thing, it doesn't blow over. It festers, and every day that silence stretches on, the distance between us grows wider. That's silence killing connection. Or think about appreciation. How often do we assume people know we value them, so we never say it? They know I'm proud of them. They know I love them. But here's the thing. People don't get tired of hearing those words, and assuming they already know is just silence in disguise. That silence leaves people wondering if they're seen, if they matter, if you notice. And over time, unspoken appreciation feels like neglect. Then there's conflict. Silence in conflict feels tempting. You don't want to rock the boat, so you stay quiet. But staying quiet doesn't fix the problem. It buries it, and buried problems don't disappear. They grow roots. Eventually, the silence breaks, not in a calm conversation, but in an explosion that could have been prevented if someone had just spoken up earlier. I'll never forget a story a man once told me. His dad passed away, and at the funeral, all he could think about were the things he never said, the thank yous, the I love yous, the memories he wanted to share. He thought there would always be time, but time ran out. That silence became the heaviest weight he carried. That's the tragedy of silence. It steals connection not only in life, but even after. So what's the way forward? Courage. It takes courage to break silence, courage to say, I was wrong, courage to say, I care about you, courage to say, this is hard for me. Silence is easy in the moment, but courage is what keeps connection alive. Here's the shift. Instead of waiting for the perfect time to speak, create the time. Instead of waiting for the other person to go first, choose to go first. Instead of assuming they already know, tell them anyway. Because silence leaves people guessing, and guessing is a breeding ground for distance, doubt, and disconnection. Even in small ways, breaking silence makes a difference. Send the text that says, thinking of you. Speak the encouragement you're holding back. Voice the concern instead of burying it. None of these things guarantee the outcome you want, but they guarantee the connection has a chance. Silence guarantees it doesn't. Now, does this mean we need to fill every quiet moment with words? No, not every silence is bad. There's a kind of silence that's sacred. When you sit beside someone in grief, when you pause before reacting in anger, when you rest together in peace, that silence connects. The silence that kills is the silence of withholding, the silence of words that should have been spoken but weren't. So here's the challenge. Look at the relationships in your life right now. Where has silence created distance? Who needs to hear something from you that you've been holding back? Don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't assume they already know. Say it now, because silence kills connection, but courage, the courage to speak, to apologize, to appreciate, to be honest, that's what breathes life back into it. Guard the connection. We've talked about 6 silent killers of connection: judgment, distraction, assumptions, comparison, defensiveness, and silence. On the surface, they may not look dramatic. They don't storm in with fireworks. They sneak in quietly in everyday conversations, in little habits, in moments we don't even think twice about. But over time, they erode the very thing we all crave, closeness. Here's the truth. Connection doesn't usually die from one big blow-up. It dies from 1,000 small cuts: the quick judgment, the sideways glance at a phone, the story we wrote in our head without checking the facts, the at least that minimized someone's pain, the defensive words that pushed someone away, the apology we never spoke, the appreciation we never voiced. Piece by piece, those small things stack up until the bridge between us collapses. But the good news, if small choices can kill connection, small choices can also revive it. Every time you choose curiosity over judgment, you build connection. Every time you choose presence over distraction, you build connection. Every time you choose understanding over assumption, you build connection. Every time you choose empathy over comparison, you build connection. Every time you choose humility over defensiveness, you build connection. Every time you choose courage over silence, you build connection. It's not about being perfect. None of us will get this right all the time. We're going to slip. We're going to catch ourselves judging or drifting or assuming. But connection isn't about perfection. It's about awareness and effort. It's about noticing when we've started to tear something down and then choosing in that moment to rebuild. Because here's the bigger picture. Connection is the foundation of everything that matters. Families thrive on connection. Friendships survive on connection. Teams succeed because of connection. And when we let these killers run loose in our lives, we're not just losing conversations. We're losing people. We're losing opportunities. We're losing trust. But when we guard connection, when we protect it with presence, empathy, curiosity, humility, and courage, we gain something priceless. We gain relationships that last. We gain trust that deepens. We gain memories we won't regret. So the challenge is simple, but it's not easy. Pay attention. Pay attention to the moments when judgment creeps in, when distraction pulls you away, when assumptions fill in the gaps, when comparison steals the spotlight, when defensiveness builds walls, and when silence tempts you to stay quiet. In those moments, you hold the power to either kill connection or keep it alive. Choose to keep it alive every time, because connection isn't just something we want. It's something we need. It's what makes life meaningful. It's what makes love last. It's what makes us human, and nothing is worth losing that.